What if you could save a life, or even 2 or 3? Right now, there's a pregnant woman in our community desperately looking for answers. Her fear and despair are met with the world's promise that it could be all over with just one choice. A few pills, a simple procedure, and her life will be back to normal. But we know that is not true. We know there is a better future for her and her baby. We believe she can have her baby and her future too. We need to reach her first and give her help and hope. She needs to know that she is not alone. When you become a partner for life with the Ministry of Life Network, you give a woman a no-cost ultrasound today and ongoing support tomorrow. With your monthly support, you transform her life and save her baby's life. And it doesn't stop there. For only $50 a month, you provide a life-revealing ultrasound. That's 12 ultrasounds each year. And for $100 a month, you provide no-cost pregnancy care and parenting coaching for a family and their baby. To join the Partner for Life team today, just visit elifenetwork.com. Through your support, you can give these moms a future and help save lives every month. That's the letter E for everyone. lifenetwork.com.
Welcome to the LifeCast, valuing life and transforming lives. Find out more at elifenetwork.com. Here now is your host, Rich Bennett.
Greetings, friends, and welcome to the LifeCast. Thanks so much for being with us. And today's LifeCast program is made possible in part by Christian Brothers Automotive in Rockrimmon. Continue to be so grateful for their support. And in just a minute, I'll be joined by my friend Andrew Wood, who is a passionate pro-life and fatherhood advocate from the great state of Tennessee. But first, today's LifeCast headline: Colorado is paying a steep price for trying to silence life-saving medical care. Earlier this month, the state agreed to pay over $6 million in attorney's fees after a federal court struck down its unconstitutional ban on abortion pill reversal, or what's known as APR. The state will pay the settlement to Beckett Law and the Alliance Defending Freedom, the legal groups that successfully defended the right for Bella Health and Castle Rock Women's Clinic to offer this life-saving care. If you remember, back in 2023, Colorado became the first and only state in the nation to ban abortion pill reversal, making it illegal for medical professionals to help women who regret starting a chemical abortion and want to save their baby's life. Well, a federal judge blocked that law in a ruling late last year, protecting Bella Health and Castle Rock Women's Health, which provide APR as part of their faith-based mission to serve women. And the fact is this: abortion pill reversal works. When a woman has taken the first abortion drug, mifepristone, then changes her mind, doctors administer progesterone, which is a natural hormone that the body uses to sustain pregnancy. Medical professionals report success rates of up to 68% when the protocol is administered on time. This victory builds on a federal appeals court ruling in New York last month, where judges affirmed that pro-life pregnancy centers and Heartbeat International are free to talk about abortion pill reversal while their case continues, rejecting efforts to label this life-saving information as misleading. Well, hopefully these rulings will give future states pause before advancing laws driven by ideology instead of good medicine. And that's the LifeCast headline. Now it's time for today's LifeCast guest. Andrew Wood is a dynamic speaker, storyteller, and former pregnancy center leader who has spent decades serving the pro-life mission. Most recently, he led church outreach at CareNet, partnering with churches nationwide. He's also a husband, a father of 6, and someone whose work is shaped by his love for the gospel, the value of life, and the local church. Andrew, welcome to the LifeCast.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Always good to talk to you, Rich.
So how is life in the great pro-life state of Tennessee today?
It's good, man. I got up this morning, did a workout, moved some hay, gave hay to the donkey, fed all the animals before my first meeting. So, today's been a good day.
Your day and my day started a little bit differently, but I was at the gym. I was working out, so at least I was doing something.
Yeah, any day that I can start by riding a tractor is a good day. And that may be the most Tennessean thing I've ever said.
Well, as someone who's been a part of the pro-life movement for years and also has a little bit of political background as well, what do you make of the two abortion pill reversal related wins that I just mentioned? Do you think it might give future states second thoughts about pursuing APR related actions in the future?
Well, I will first say that it is nice to finally see some rational thought win. Progesterone is, my wife, after our second pregnancy, she had a miscarriage with our second pregnancy. So with our third pregnancy, what did the doctor do? He gave her progesterone to help the pregnancy along. That is what doctors have done for decades. This is not new. This is not whack science. This is not crazy. This is simply giving a woman something that she already produces to help the pregnancy along. And what we know, and certainly what the enemy, when I talk about the enemy, the spiritual enemy knows, is after taking that first abortion pill, there is still hope and it's still a chance that we can reverse that with progesterone. So hats off to the federal court. I never thought I'd say that. Hats off to the federal court for making the right decision. I would hope that this would cause certain states to pause going after pregnancy centers, but I'm afraid that there's zealousness in which they pursue their ideology. It will not change what they do. They don't care that they have to spend taxpayer dollars to pay these settlements because they're going to continue to press in and continue to go after the work of pregnancy centers. But man, am I thankful for places and organizations like ADF and the amazing work that they do to stand up day in and day out for the work that you're doing, Rich, for the work that pregnancy centers are doing across the country. So this is certainly a win worth celebrating for the state of Colorado and hopefully for states down the road to say this is not whack science. This is actually good medicine and good care for those that made a choice and made a decision that they regret and they want to try to remedy. And there is a remedy out there. So if you claim to be pro-choice today, then if you change your mind, there is a remedy. Let's
like choice.
Into that. Exactly.
Yeah, well, my hope is that it will give pause, although maybe it's naive. But, you know, a little bit of history on the APR piece of this legislation. It was basically written by pro-abortion groups. This wasn't something legislators came up with. It was gift wrapped for them, and they then passed it. And it has been nothing but trouble for the state ever since. But I guess we'll see. And like you said, the $6 million, unfortunately, in a legislature that has trouble balancing a budget, they've proven money is not really their top concern.
And you know what? That is something that a lot of states have in common. So I'll just leave it at that.
Well, today's program comes right on the heels of Sanctity of Human Life Sunday, which really has become Sanctity of Human Life Month. And we're getting an opportunity at Life Network to be on the platforms of more than 25 churches in our city. And I know not everybody has that same good fortune, but we have a lot of pro-life churches that will give voice to that in our community. And I want to ask you, why do you think it's so important for the church to be a major voice for the sanctity of human life?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is the church should be in the driver's seat when it comes to the life issue. For a long time, the political actors have been in the driver's seat, the advocates have been in the driver's seat, the pregnancy centers have been in the driver's seat. And we've sat in those seats, Rich. You're currently sitting in that seat. And we're not knocking that, but the church, the bride, has to step in when government institutions seek to enshrine sin, when government institutions get theological, the church has to speak into that. Now, so what we sometimes hear is, well, I don't want to get political. I don't want to, but the reality is, I don't think you're meaning what you think you're meaning. I think actually you mean you don't want to get partisan. But throughout scripture, folks got political. Daniel got political. You know, when he was told to bow to a golden statue of the king, he went back home, opened his windows, and he prayed to God to let everybody know, I'm not going to do that. You can throw me in the lion's den all you want. Well, that was getting political. So there's times where we have to step in and speak out. But when it comes to the life issue, especially for sanctity of life, it gives the church an opportunity to celebrate the sanctities that were created in the garden prior to the fall. The sanctity of life being one of the chief sanctities that was created there. So God breathed life into man We bear the image of God. So we can't sit on our hands or sit on the sidelines while a culture is saying that life has no value. So I would encourage the church. This is a moment and an opportunity to step into what you've been called to stand for, which is the most vulnerable in our community. There is no more vulnerable population than the boys and girls, babies in the womb.
Well, Andrew, I know you're coming off of several years of leadership for a national organization, CareNet's church outreach. And, I've really seen in my now 9+ years in this role, kind of two extremes in terms of expectations for the church. You have the one extreme on this issue of, I think there are people here in our community that would want their church to talk about the life issue every Sunday. And, I think that's just not realistic, right? There's a lot of issues, understandably, pastors need to address. And I think also that group sometimes can beat up the church for quote unquote not doing enough. And, I don't know about you, but I have severe pause beating up on the bride of Christ too terribly much. Now, the flip side of that is what you said, which is, this is a political issue, and really that should be left for politics, and being silent on it is the appropriate thing. It's a hard issue. And I do think there are some pastors that understandably know that it's a hard issue because there are people in his church that have a past abortion, and it's going to be hurtful for them. So all of that to say, when churches have worked best when it comes to life-affirming work and engaging in the pro-life issue, what does it look like?
Yeah, well, I would first say, a lot of folks want, and this isn't just the secular culture. A lot of folks on our team, Rich, throw shade at the church when it comes to they don't care enough, or the reality is no one is giving more to the pro-life movement than the church. No one is giving more to pregnancy centers than the church. No one is volunteering more. No one is fostering more. No one is adopting more. The church is active in doing great work. Now, do we wish to see it spoke from the pulpit a little bit more, from the platform a little bit more? Certainly. But there's a lot of causes. There's a lot of things that the church needs to care about and speak into. So, I talked to a pastor one time, and he's like, I feel like I have to have a publicist because everything that happens, people think I need to have a statement prepared for it. It doesn't matter what it is. And he's like, that's not what I went to seminary for. That's not what I signed up for. And I'm like, I get it, but we just live in a different time today. And so I would say when it's done well, the church just naturally speaks about the things God calls us to speak on. And we do that with marriage. We do that with parenting. We do that with alcohol abuse. We do that with addiction. When you're preaching the word of God, you are going to step on toes and you're going to deal with the things that the culture is dealing with. The problem comes when you say, oh, this text would have me speak to the abortion issue, so I'm going to overlook that text. Well, then now you're starting to adjust what the word of God says because you don't want to ruffle feathers or step on anybody's toes. And that's not the answer. So the answer is simply preaching the word of God and saying, here is where we stand on the issue of life. And what I love is when pastors will say to the congregation and to the community, if you find yourself in a situation where you're dealing with a pregnancy you may not want, or you don't know how to handle, or you don't know where to go, here is what our church will do. And when you prepare your church and have folks within your congregation saying, if you find yourself in that situation, here's what we will do for you, then people are running to the church and not away from the church. Then we're leading with grace, with mercy, with truth, not simply judgment and telling you, that's a sin, get out of here. The reality is we should have people running to the church to find the care that they need. And when you do that well, you're like Jesus with the woman at the well. When Jesus approaches the woman at the well, what does he do? Where's your husband? I don't have a husband. And she was hoping the conversation would end, but it didn't end. He says, you're right in saying you don't have a husband, and the man currently in your bed isn't your husband either. And what you're searching for here will quench your thirst for a moment, but what I have for you will quench it for eternity. What he's saying to her is what you're searching for with drink right here and what you're searching for in your bed will quench your thirst for a moment, but what I have for you will quench it for eternity. So Jesus stepped in, brought truth, pulled her out of the shadows, and then brought compassion on the back end, and she became an evangelist for the good news of a good God. And so when it's done well, you're not turning your pulpit into a bully pulpit. You're simply preaching the gospel and preaching the truth. And your congregation then gets an understanding of, okay, this is where we stand on the issue of life.
Well, you've outlined some of the challenges that pastors face when it comes to preaching on life. Certainly one of them is the headline of the day, and it sparks congregation members to say, I want you to speak on this. Yeah. But what are some of the biggest challenges in your mind as you've talked to pastors around the country in your role at CareNet when it comes to engaging the pro-life mission, and how can churches and pastors overcome those challenges?
I think one of the challenges is simply understanding the abortion landscape in our country. I don't know if folks realize worldwide there's about 73 million abortions every single year. I don't know if folks realize that what the abortion pills actually do. And so for some, it's like, I don't want to speak on this issue because I'm not an expert and I don't know how to talk about it. Or some folks are like, well, abortion is surgical, so it's only this, or abortion is what's chemical abortion? What does that even mean? And so I think part of what I tried to do when I was leading a pregnancy center, and I know you do, Rich, is educating and equipping folks to better understand what's happening. So in the state of Colorado, even with the abortion pill reversal, how many people are like, oh, so it's just another pill? But then you're like, no, it's progesterone. They're like, well, isn't progesterone a natural thing that occurs with a woman? And so helping understand that, I think, will get us to a place of being able to speak on the issue better. I think where we sometimes step in it or mess up is when, whatever the issue, you speak on a Sunday, and because you read an article, you feel like an expert on the issue. And then the congregation is like, yeah, you're not. And so I would say, don't pretend to be an expert. But if you're trying to talk through a issue that's delicate, and by the numbers, we think, 1 in 3, 1 in 4 women that are sitting in your congregation on a Sunday have an abortion in their past, and the numbers are pretty similar with men. If that is the case, you need to speak with authority, but you also need to speak that you know what you're talking about. And so I think there's some of that. I had a conversation yesterday with a guy, and he asked me about a local pregnancy center. And he was like, are they still against abortion? And I was like, well, yeah, they're still doing what they do. And he said, well, I heard an ad the other day on the radio where they were partnering with some camp to provide compassion and care for those that had had an abortion. So I then had to explain to him about post-abortive care. I had to explain to him about, there are some women, some men that have had an abortion in their past. They may now have a baby now, but we're trying to get them to Jesus. So we do want to have places for them to go and meet Jesus. He had no idea. He thought they were simply saying, now we support abortion. And so I think sometimes we just have to communicate it appropriately as we're speaking about the issue.
Well, and you sharing that reminds me of a conversation that started as a difficult conversation with a pastor here in town who had come to our pregnancy center's website and was concerned because we talk about abortion.
Right.
And I think just to your point, I think he was mistakenly thinking by talking about abortion, we're somehow encouraging that. And I was able to explain to him, like this past year, 69% of the women who came in our doors, abortion was on the table. So we're not putting the idea into their heads. And for the other 31%, I can guarantee there's somebody in their life that would be a voice for abortion. And so it's just hitting it head on with what's true about that choice and equipping them. It's not an advocacy, it's about information. But what are some practical ways that churches can help families and communities get involved and make a real meaningful difference in supporting life? And as I ask you that question, I'm mindful of a church that just did a fundraiser where the kids were involved in doing just a little coin-based offering to benefit our pregnancy center. And what I loved about that was not just the $600+ that they raised, but what it meant as a teaching moment for every one of those families in that church. But what would you say in terms of churches equipping families and communities to get involved?
Yeah, I love that. I think it does start at a young age. There were, churches in my town when I led a pregnancy center that at vacation Bible school time, and if you're not familiar with that, Google it. It's a great time this summer. A lot of in the South, what we do is we take our kids to every Bible school, and you kind of get a break every night. You can go on a date with your wife, and the kids can go to vacation Bible school at the church. But they did the same thing. They were taking up funds, and they were having a competition between the classes, between the girls and the boys. And then I was able to speak about what we do at the end of it. And it was always a great opportunity to do that. But I think practically too, we have to get folks in the congregation. Often we have folks that are willing and able, right? If you went up to somebody at your congregation this week and said, are you willing to help somebody that's facing a pregnancy decision? Oh yeah, of course. Are you able to help them? Oh, yep, 100%. Okay, well, we have somebody right now. Are you ready to help them? Well, I'm not, it's like those man on the street interviews where they're like, are you willing to do this? Are you able? And they're like, yeah. And they're like, okay, we have somebody right now that needs a home. And they're like, well, I have to go talk to somebody. And so what we're trying to do is get people ready. Are they ready to respond in that moment? One of the best examples I can give, my buddy is a first responder, works for the fire department. And he was at my niece's graduation. And it was in a different county. He wasn't on duty. He was just sitting in the bleachers watching the graduation. And over in the corner, a guy had a heart attack and fell and was flatlined. And everybody in that building, I can assure you, if you'd asked them before, are you willing and able to help somebody that flatlines and has a heart attack? Oh, yes, I'm willing and able. How many people got up? Very few, because they weren't ready. And so my buddy gets up, saves this man's life. No one told him the night before, bring your bag. No one told him, hey, this is going to happen. But all of his training, all of his preparation made him ready for that moment. So what are we doing as a church to take the excitement and the willingness and the people that are able and getting them ready so that if somebody comes into our church and they need that assistance, we're ready to step in and provide that care. And I think part of that is simply educating our folks on, hey, we're not making a political statement here. We're simply saying if a woman or a family in our community needs help and we can help them choose life and then be there for them, here is what we're going to do. And sometimes it is that simple. We like to overcomplicate things, but sometimes it is simply saying we're going to step in and we're going to help. If we claim to be pro-life, we're going to do the things that we need to do to make sure that life happens.
So I mentioned those 26 churches that we're getting to share in this month, and I have no doubt there are many churches beyond that in our community and communities all over the country where the pastor himself is going to talk from the platform about the value of life. But let's say I'm hearing that. I was in church last Sunday, and my church was completely silent, and the last time that they talked about life in church will be the first time. So what would you say to that person in terms of how can they effectively, winsomely approach their church leadership in a way that would be heard for them to consider stepping into talking about protecting human life?
Yeah, if I take my headphones out right now, you see smoke coming out. Look, here's the reality. There are going to be moments like that. We had a church at one point that was a big supporter. Most of our staff attended the church. And I met somebody I was at my daughter's dance class, and this lady asked, I don't even know how it came up. She asked what I did, and I told her, and she said, I don't even know if our church stands for life. I don't know if they're on, and it was that church. And so I was like, wow, there's a disconnect here. They're not saying it from the platform, but their actions are very much in support of what we do. So I would encourage, instead of letting that fester and instead of getting angry, because again, I've been there, believe me, ask my wife. But instead of getting angry, I would have a conversation. I would have a meeting with the pastor and say, look, this is something that I care deeply about. Maybe you've experienced it at another church, or maybe, you can introduce them to a pregnancy center. Sometimes it's not that they don't care, it's that they don't know. And so how can we have conversations with folks where we're not trying to bring the pastor into the principal's office and slap their wrist, but we're saying, hey, did you know that recently this happened in Colorado? Did you know that recently in the state of New Jersey, the government is attacking pregnancy centers? Did you know that there's women and men in our community that are struggling? Did you help them know? Invite them to a pregnancy center. And if you're a pregnancy center listening to this and you have churches in your community that you feel like are neglecting that, make opportunities for them to come to your building, Because once they come to your building and they see the work that you're doing, I think it's going to open their eyes. But you can't be selfish and be like, well, I'm not even going to have a conversation with them. Invite them in to do a devotion with your staff. Invite them into the building to do things that they love to do. Pastors love to lead devotions and pray with folks. Look, if somebody asked me to come lead a devotion, guess how quick it's going to take me to say yes?
Yeah.
You're not even going to finish the question. And so reach out to them and have them come in and do those things instead of being angry and hateful. Look, they got a lot of things to care about. And so that's a great opportunity to kind of channel that effort and maybe talk to your spouse and go, I'm angry, but I'm going to handle this a different way. I think you'll see some fruit from that.
Well, in our closing couple of minutes here, if you could paint a picture of a church that was fully engaged in the pro-life mission, what would that look like? How do you get there?
Yeah, I would say the fully engaged church is one that understands the life issue. They're partnered up with their pregnancy center financially. They're partnered up with their pregnancy center with material resources and volunteers. They're there at the events when the pregnancy center is having events, but also you can see fruit in the building. There are women and men in the building that faced an unplanned pregnancy and the church stepped up. And the way you get there is simply saying yes and getting your people ready. So there are resources out there that can help you do that. But outside of that, it's simply the pastor and the pastor team saying, here's what we are going to do when someone is faced with this scenario. And we don't want anyone running away from our church. We want them running to our church, and we're going to partner with them and love on them and be there for them.
Well, Andrew, this has been a great discussion, and we haven't even got a chance to talk about your recently released book, Hero, Ghost, Villain, which focuses on fatherhood. And if it's okay, I'd love to have you back next week where we can talk about that and the importance of dads getting engaged.
Absolutely. Love to.
Well, if today's conversation encouraged you, don't forget to subscribe or share this program with a friend. And once again, thanks to today's sponsor, Christian Brothers Automotive in Rockrimmon. And thank you for listening to the LifeCast, where we celebrate life, speak up for the voiceless, and highlight important life-affirming work. For executive producer Mike Segovia and producer Serena Dillon, I'm Rich Bennett. Thanks for being with us for this episode of the LifeCast.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the LifeCast. To find out more about Life Network, go to elifenetwork.com. Once you're there, you can check out the many outreaches we have available. From our men's services to our Bridges of Hope support program, you'll be sure to find a helping hand for yourself or someone else in their time of need. Also, we have many ways to get involved here at Life Network. Simply click on the Get Involved tab and see all the opportunities we have available to serve. We appreciate your prayers and support for this ministry. Find out how you can come alongside us by going to elifenetwork.com. Just search the top of the index for the green Donate tab. Thank you for listening in today. Be sure to join us next time for another episode of the LifeCast. The LifeCast is a ministry of Life Network.
My name is Alyssa. When I found out I was pregnant, I wasn't ready to be a mom, and I planned to get an abortion. But at Life Network, a volunteer named Nancy met me with compassion. She listened, answered all my questions, and followed up with me, even when I told her I was still considering ending my pregnancy. She never judged me or gave up on me. Her care helped me realize I wasn't alone. Because of Nancy and volunteers like her, I chose life for my baby.
Life Network relies on volunteers to serve women like Alyssa. Whether you're a patient advocate, parenting coach, nurse, or willing to serve at our growing thrift store, there's a place for you here. Visit elifenetwork.com/volunteer to learn more. That's elifenetwork.com/volunteer.